How do you all? Chris from Clean was a file course once again. I want to talk a little bit today about networking. So, I had a question, excuse me while I'm messing around with the camera. I had a question directed at me from a young lad in the northeast called Anthony. He was talking about BNI as a business network. Is it worth it? So, I'm going to talk a little bit about networking as a whole, and as the video goes on, I'll explain why I chose not to join BNI. It wasn't for me. But ultimately, my first experience of networking was a small networking group called Ronja, and they were based on the Fylde Coast, and they used to meet up every Wednesday at breakfast time to talk a little bit about, you know, what they were up to, and, you know, who they were looking to get meetings with, who they were looking to connect with, and further their business goals. Okay, so for example, I would, you know, they might turn, you know, each of us would turn around and stand up, talk a little bit, 60 seconds worth about their business and what they wanted from that one meeting. So, for example, I might turn around and say, my name's Chris, I'm from Estuary Cleaning, we clean windows on the Fylde Coast, and we specialise in exterior cleaning. This week, I'm looking for a connection into, for example, you know, Marks and Spencer's on Cleveley's Victoria Road sort of thing. If anybody knows the management or the facilities team, I'd like a coffee and a conversation, I'd like a bit of an introduction. Thanks very much. That's Chris from Estuary Cleaning was a Fylde Coast. Sit down. Dealt with. Right, okay, so what would happen is that other people in that group might make notes. Now, you might have other people in that group that might know the person you're looking to speak to, and at that point what would happen is, once everybody's finished talking and introducing themselves, you know, you might find that people in that group might turn around and say, Chris, I know the person you're looking for. Their name is Emily. I speak to them pretty regularly. Let's get a coffee. Let's have a chat afterwards. I'll get you the details. I'll try and see what I can do for you. That kind of thing. Okay. Now you have to understand that a network. Everybody has a network. Okay. You might not know it, but you do. So, what is a network? It is basically somebody that you know enough to have a conversation with. You might not know the ins and outs of their life. You might not know what their mother's maiden name was, but you know them enough to have a conversation with them. For example, when you go down to the pub, you will probably know 20 or 30 people by first name. But you probably couldn't tell me where they live. You wouldn't know what their children were called. You know them socially. Okay. And so ultimately they are part of your network, your social network, but your professional network is people that you deal with on a regular basis. These are the people that, you know, you can refer services to. So let's say, for argument's sake, I'm cleaning the windows on Mrs. Jones's house, and she pops out and says, Chris, I was wondering, do you know someone that does this? You know, do you know a builder? Do you know a reliable tradesman? Do you know someone that can fix my decking? Do you know someone that can relay my driveway, etc., etc.? And the answer to that, if you were part of that network, might be, yeah, actually, I know Bob. He does X, Y, and Z. Let me get his card. And so what you would do is you would collect cards at the meeting, and I would have them in a little binder, and then I would go back to the van and say, yeah, that's the guy you're looking for. Tell him that Chris from Estuary Cleaning sent you, and he'll look after you. Let me know when you get on. Fine. You go back to the van, send that guy a quick text message, say, mate, I've just handed one of your cards out to Mrs. Such and Such. She's looking for this. Expect her call at some point this week. Nice one, type thing. Dink. All right, okay. And then what would happen is that if she decided to, you know, sign up with this guy to have X amount of work done, then what would happen is ultimately you get a thank you afterwards and all that sort of stuff. And ultimately that would, you know, he would also be doing the same thing for me. So any of his customers, they might say, oh, do you know someone that does window cleaning? Do you know someone that does this? Do you know someone that does that? Yeah, I do. The guy's name's Chris. There's his card. Right. And eat, sleep, and repeat. And what would happen is each person within that network, in theory, is working for each other. And it's good, you know. But the thing is where the downsides I found with networking were where you would be working, and let's say, for argument's sake, a solicitor would, let's say one of your customers asks for a solicitor to write a will. That's about £3,000 worth of work. So you get that guy £3,000 worth of work, and the question you have to ask yourself is this: is that solicitor going to get you £3,000 worth of work back? And it's all about reciprocity. It's all about working for each other. You know, you win some, you lose some, that kind of thing, right? For the privilege of being part of that network, Ronja, I used to pay £395 a year, plus I think it was £30 a month, and that was for the breakfast, the coffee, etc., the venue, and all that sort of stuff. And then we'd go about our day, and then we would, over the course of the week, we might arrange outside of the group to have coffee, to have a beer, go for a meal or something like that, and talk a bit about each other's businesses and how we might be able to help each other. Okay, that in a sense is how BNI works. Okay, much like how Ronja did. However, so the reason I left Ronja, it's now called the Business Breakfast, and I'm still in touch with people in the group, but I'm no longer a member. And so the thing is the reason why I left that networking group is because I found that I had outgrown that network, because I was getting regular work again. I was doing a lot better just organically without it, and to be honest with you, it stopped returning its cost, and it didn't really seem worth it to me because the networking area was so small. By the time I'd got my second van on the road, we were starting to gain traction in the area anyway, and decided actually it ultimately wasn't worth it. That said, I was invited to join BNI. When I turned up to BNI, I thought that it would be much similar to Ronja, and it was in some areas, but it wasn't in other areas. So, for example, they expected you to bring guests, and they almost, at that point in time, and it's probably changed since, but at that time you used to have to bring X amount of guests, and if you brought fewer guests than were desired, you were graded a red, and then an amber, and then a green if you were the golden boy, sort of thing. It reminded me a little bit of school, getting a gold star and stuff like that. It seemed a little pointless, quite frankly, and very childish. It seemed very cliquey, and I jokingly said to my friend who actually invited me, he says, mate, it's a cult. Because they operate a certain way, and it was very different to Ronja. It was much more formal, and yeah, it wasn't me. I'm a no filter, no bullshit kind of guy. If I think something's toss, I'll tell you. It's not that I am cynical, it's that I am, if you're cynical, you look for faults that aren't there. If you're a realist, you point out faults that are clearly visible to everybody. And the thing is I'm a realist. I looked at that and I thought, it didn't make much sense to me. The traffic light system, for example, it would be something like, if you bought less than this amount of guests, you'd be a red. But it didn't take into account the amount of value or the amount of trade that person that you brought into the group. You know what I mean? It was like, let's say for argument's sake, you have Bill and Bob, right? Bill brings you 50 people, 50 visitors to that group, and that brings around about, let's say that brings £1,000 worth of trade amongst the group, okay? But Bob over here only bought one guy, but that one guy got £50,000 worth of trade for the group. Yeah, the guy that brought the one guy that brought the most value would be graded a red, and the guy that bought 50 people that generated less money would get the gold star. And it was almost like, I'm getting a wooden spoon for bringing more value to the group. It's just a joke. So it just seemed to me that it was a quantity over quality issue. I also felt that really BNI, this is my experience of it, by the way. I felt that BNI were leaning too much on what they could do for me versus what I could do for them. But at the same time, they were expecting you to trust the fact that they could do this for your business. We can do that. You want more work, you want this, but, and it's like, it just seemed to me that, you know, it was very clicky, and it was very sort of structured. I didn't agree with the structure. I didn't agree with you know, the whole idea of quantity versus quality. I didn't agree with it at all. And for me, it just seemed, for example, I turned around and said to the group, bearing in mind what they want is they want you to give 1,200 quid a year to be part of BNI. So I've gone from paying my £600 or £700 a year with Ronja, and now you want me to pay 1,200 quid for BNI. So the return, I would want far more than what I pay for it. Okay. The problem is when I said to the one of the girls, that one of the ladies that was at BNI, I says, yeah, no drama. So I see the value in it. I says, you know, I can get along with the idea of what I've got to do, etc. You know, she's like, have you got any questions? I says, yeah. I says, can you get me? So I was stood in the foyer, and there was a door, and on that door was written club secretary. Bearing in mind we're in a fancy golf club, and that is the guy that ultimately you want to talk to if you want to get a window cleaning contract. Now, what I was not asking for, I wasn't asking for a handout. I was not asking for, you know, for there to be a monetary reward to that. I was not asking for a contract. I simply asked the question: can you get me a conversation with the guy behind that door? A conversation. That's all I wanted. And when all said and done, that is the test of a network. Can you get me a conversation with someone that does this? If the answer is yes, okay, then chances are it's got potential. Let's just say that. If they say, which is what they did say, they turn around and says, oh, well, we only do this for members. So what you're saying is, you can get me a conversation with the guy behind that door. I've just got to pony up 1,200, 1,300 quid. Right? The question I have is this: is if I'm handing money over to BNI, am I on trial for them, or are they on trial for me? Have I got to prove my worth to the group, or has the group got to prove its worth to me? If you want me to invest into the group, I have no problem in doing that. You just need to show me its worth. You need to show me the value. And if you can't get me a conversation with a guy behind a door, literally 12 feet from where I'm stood, then really, this is not the sort of investment I want to make. Again, all I was asking for was a conversation. Can you get me a meeting with that guy? This is after all a network, you know. So make of that what you will. But ultimately, in my humble opinion, your alternatives to paid networking is simply to set your own network up. And it doesn't need to be formal. All you have to do is reach out to people you want a conversation with and say, you know, for argument's sake, you know, can we have a coffee and talk through a couple of ideas? I've got a couple of things I want to chat to you about. I'm hoping that we can do X, Y, and Z. Let's see if we can benefit from each other's knowledge, etc. That's how you network. You don't need necessarily to be a paid up member of a group unless it's a very select elite group you want to get into. And when all said and done, you know, is that group going to get me what it's worth? And more crucially, can I get along with how the group operates? You know, I enjoyed networking with Ronja, but at some point it outstayed it. I overextended its value. I outgrew its value. Yeah. But BNI had real potential. But I just could not get along with the people in that group. And it could just be the members of that chapter were not, you know, my cup of tea. It could be that, you know, what I was asking for was too much to give. But ultimately, my opinion of paid networking is that it should show a return. If you're going to pony up that level of money, you need to see a return, you know. And if they couldn't even get me a meeting with people 12 feet away, it's not really something I wanted to be a part of. I'm currently part of a networking group and a group on a WhatsApp group, and I pay nothing. It's free. I was invited into the group by Michael, who's a friend, and in that group is a young lad from Liverpool who's just starting out. Michael, who is, he's not new to business, but he's new to window cleaning. There's myself, there is Ben from the southeast. He's got 5 vans, window cleaning, exterior cleaning, bits and pieces. Patrick, who has 20 vans, is doing really, really well. He's based in the south of England, etc. And all these people, and there are much, much more in that group, and it's cost me nothing, okay? I was invited into that group because we share ideals, a way of thinking. We want to grow, we want to get better, we want to, we want to ultimately not limit ourselves. And again, your network is your net worth. Who in that group can help you with a problem? So, for example, through networking outside of BNI and outside of Ronja, I have met a guy called George who we work together, etc., on a number of projects and stuff like that. He has reach and access equipment. So if there is a job that I want to take on, that I look at the building and go, really, we need a crane, we need a cradle, etc., he's the guy I get in touch with. If I get a customer that says, Chris, can you do roof cleaning? We don't do roof cleaning, but George does. So then I refer George in, etc. He benefits from my customers, but at the same time, he does roof cleaning. He does not do window cleaning. So again, we work into each other's network. It's a mutual relationship. We mutually benefit from knowing and working together, okay? And I've recently got in touch with him over working on a care home, clearing some gutters out where some slates have slidden into a gutter 3 floors up. So we need to go up in a cradle, clear the gutters out, etc., take photographs and assess the damage, give that to the owner, and they can make a decision, etc. That is in essence how a network works. Who do you know that can help you with a problem? And that for me doesn't necessarily have to cost you anything. It just has to cost you time. It has to cost you your willingness to reach out to other people, your vulnerability, if you like, reaching out and talking to people and asking a question. Do you fancy getting a coffee at some point? I'm hoping we can work together, etc. I'm just seeing if there's ways that we can work together. Done. All you've done is ask a question. The worst they can do is say no. And what's that cost you? It's literally a 20-second conversation on the phone. That's it. Done. Dealt with. Nipped. So, yeah, that's why I won't sign up with BNI. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Do you think that paid networking is worth it? Have you, let me know your horror stories. Let me know your good stories, your pros, your cons, etc. If you like the content that I put out, please leave a comment, like, subscribe, etc. And I shall see you in the next video. Keep on keeping on.